Welcome to the Business Pro League podcast. My name is Daniel, and I am so excited to have our next guest here this week. We have Mr. Dan Gibney, who is a great friend and runs a great business called M's for Kids. And we're going to talk a little bit about how he started that as a business and learning all about how he really built up his business in the e-commerce industry. So welcome, Dan. It's so good to have you here.
Great. Thanks for having me, man. It's great to be here. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, awesome. Well, let's go straight from the beginning. So, tell us about your start in business. I understand you were a subcontractor in the music industry, and then you kind of fell into this, I guess, business. So, tell us about that journey and what that was like.
Yeah, so I was, started playing drums late in school, and then was able to get some opportunities to do some gigs fairly soon after school. And started playing a little bit, but obviously I had something inbuilt within me. I just loved drum gear. And so I was buying and selling drum stuff. I started buying on eBay in the year 1999. So buying and selling a bit, and I enjoyed doing that because it indulged my passion of drums, but I also made a bit of money. And, I was teaching drums at the time. I was playing drums. And it was full-time. It was giving me a full-time income, which was great. I got married in 2004. I was proud of the fact I got to write musician on my wedding certificate. I thought that was pretty cool, even though technically I'm a drummer, some would say, but regardless. So I was happy about that. But then about two and a half years later, our first daughter was born, and I just had a desire to do something a little bigger, a little more. I was still buying and selling drum gear, making a bit of money here and there. And I looked around, I thought there's got to be, maybe I'll sell something online. I had a friend of mine from school that had started selling some like men's fashion accessories and a few bits and pieces. Him and I went along to a one-day seminar in the city, and it was, this organization from America that was, basically selling you a website in a box, teaching you how to build a website, get products, sell it, ship it. And something within me, I thought, you know what, I really want to do this. I don't know what I'm going to sell. I've got no idea. But I rang my wife. I remember I was in the foyer of the convention center in Brisbane, and I said, I don't know. I just feel like we should do this. No, there was like a set amount you could pay for this license to buy this website building software. And to her credit, she's always been a great support. She said, okay, well, let's go for it. She said, what are you going to sell? I said, I've got no idea. But I just feel like it's the right thing to do. So paid for this license and then sat there for about a month or two going, my goodness, what am I going to sell? And I looked at a few things. I looked at like muso accessories, everything from drumsticks to guitar straps and cases and everything else, which in hindsight would have been good timing because there wasn't a lot of that around. I sourced a lot of product. No, not that. And then one particular day, I still remember sitting on the couch, we're watching TV, and I can't remember what inspired it, but our first daughter had been born. She was about 8 months old. And I remember I said to my wife, I just turned to her and said, what about kids' earmuffs? Like, Emily, who the business is named after, Ems is short for Emily, and EM is also short for earmuffs, which is a happy accident. But I said, what about earmuffs for kids? I can't find any. And there was a pair that I could have got, one brand that I could have got that was in Scandinavia. It would have cost about $90. And I thought, well, there's got to be a better way to do this. So very long story short, I began building the website. I found a company in Taiwan that we still deal with 17 years later. And I worked with them to design what I thought looked like a good kids earmuff. Got a few friends that did a bit of graphic design. My wife came up with the brand name, a logo, and it was a 6-month crash course in how to build a business, how to build a brand, how to build a product all at once. And I had never done this before, but I just spent a lot of time on Google. I asked a lot of questions of people who were doing stuff similarly, and we launched in December 2007.
Wow. And how long did it take for you to get established? Like once you started it and you're selling online, like because I guess what I'm asking is, would have been quite a relatively new product to the industry and to Australia. So was there a little bit of, I guess, education that you had to do to get customers to buy and to understand what you're actually selling?
Oh, absolutely. And funnily enough, it was probably more my closer friends who felt they could be honest and say to me, are you nuts? What do kids need earmuffs for? I remember the night before the shipment landed telling some friends, and they're like, because I had to, we're dealing with China. I had to buy like 5,000 of these things. And they're going, who on earth's going to buy them? What do kids need earmuffs for? And I would sit there and go, Well, my daughter's, she wants to watch me play the drums. She wants to play the drums. And if you go to concerts or, motor racing or something, but I hadn't really worked on a pitch. Look, now I can sell anyone a pair of earmuffs in about 5 seconds because if you don't need them, you know someone that does for their children. And so there was a lot of hesitation. I remember unloading the truck the next day. It's funny how your mind takes these vivid pictures. And I remember thinking, what have I done? This is insane. This is just crazy. And so that was probably mid-November, launched in December, and we got our first order in 24 hours. And again, I remember where I was sitting when it came through, and I thought, okay, I think this is going to work. It was just that little nudge, that little bit of encouragement. And by that point, I had the stock, I had the website, I had the brand name, I had bank accounts, PayPal set up. So I had a basic infrastructure. But I also was like, well, I think this can work. It was a gut instinct thing, and it was also a personal experience thing. That first order really spurred me on. And then I think over the next month, we were getting maybe one order every day, every 2 days. And what helped was that there wasn't a lot of competition. We were the first ones to really do this. So in terms of organic Google ranking and those, if people looked for us, they could find us. Now, it's obviously a different story now, and we can talk about that later. But that really helped. We were the only ones doing it. If you ever pioneer a business or a product, there's pros and cons. If you're the only one, you're a lot easier to find. But of course, if you're pioneering a business or a product nobody wants, well, no one's going to find you because no one's looking. So it's a double-edged sword. It really is. But started well. Then we had a school order about 30 pairs about 2 or 3 months later, and I thought, okay, here we go, and that sort of got things moving. But at the time, I was still teaching drums. I was still doing gigs. So I wasn't relying on this for income. And that definitely was, I think, a saving grace, or else I would have had a lot more pressure. But I was able to build over time towards full-time.
Great. And how long did it take you to get to that place of full-time?
How long it took me to get to where I could do it and how long it took to when I decided to do it are probably two different things. I didn't go full-time for 6 years. Because you have to remember, actually, I didn't mention this. My dream was that maybe if everything falls into place, maybe this will get me like an extra $200 a week pocket money on the side. That was, I'm really setting some big vision there. There was a part of me that thought, I don't think this will ever go big. So being a musician, being a drum teacher and setting my own hours, because I wasn't teaching, classes every day, 5 days a week. It was private one-on-one lessons, small group lessons at schools, and I was able to move my time around. So as the business grew, I could scale back where I needed to. So that was a real help. So I think probably about 2009 I started, or 2008 I started to take a small part-time wage. We started to attend baby expos. I started to travel a bit, to see manufacturers and things. And I was really blessed in that I was able to sort of as one increase, the other one could come down. It was a sliding scale. So I went full time in 2013. I remember talking to my auntie, who was actually in real estate, and she was telling me about a friend of hers that had recently started an e-commerce business, and she'd gone full time after 3 years or something. And my auntie said to me, "Yeah, my friend always regrets she didn't go full time earlier and didn't take the leap earlier." And in hindsight, I feel the same. I probably should have jumped earlier, but by this point we had 2 kids. You got children, you got a wife, kids, and a mortgage. That's some serious consideration you've got to take into account. So I wanted to make sure we were really ready, and I was probably quite stretched at that point. I was up late, doing a lot of emails and work, and in the middle of, I was doing shows at QPAC at the concert hall, and I remember being in sound check with a laptop next to my kit, and if the cast were talking about something, I would be quickly typing an email and then play drums and type an email. So I was juggling a bit till I made that jump,
Yeah, wow. And I guess that's a good way, if someone's interested in getting into business, it's a good way to start though, isn't it? Like if you can find a skill set that you can do as some sort of subcontractor where you are got some control over your time, that actually gives you that flexibility to start in a business or in e-commerce. It's a good way to kind of, I guess, move into business, isn't it? Like I know that from my experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would even say, look, that's probably the ideal way if you've got a bit more control over your hours, your workload, those sorts of things. Having said that, I don't think it disqualifies anybody that has a full-time job. It just makes it a little more difficult. Maybe you've got to run on a little less sleep. Maybe you've got to use some of your annual leave, not for a holiday, but to go to a conference or an expo or something like that. But it was definitely a a real balance and a win for me. And I think too, because of my involvement with the music industry, I was able to talk to people that I knew needed my product because I needed my
Mm,
product. And so I
yeah.
knew other people that did. So I could see it, being used. I can get feedback from people very quickly. But yeah, having that flexibility was definitely a bonus.
Yeah. I was thinking, I think when I was shifting into full-time business, I heard someone say that, hey, if you can replace your income and keep it for 6 months, that's about a good, indicator of when to move into your new business, because at least
Yeah,
then
I think
you've
that's
got
good.
that confidence of replacing income, which I thought was, yeah, quite
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I think, there are some, look, I always say I have a lot of people talk to me that have ideas, or I've got this idea for a product or a business. And if they're under 25, they're not married, they're living with their parents, I say just go for it, because the worst case is, okay, you're going to stay at your parents a bit longer, or if you've moved out of home, you might have to move back with your parents if it doesn't work. But you've got a lot less risk and a lot less exposure. There are people that quit their job and start a new business, and bam, it has to pay them from dollar one. And I got a lot of respect and admiration for those people. It just wasn't something I was prepared to do. And different people have different risk appetites. They have different support systems around them. So it definitely has to be tailored to the individual circumstance as well.
Yeah, totally. And like you said, like you being with a family, and in my experience, that was my experience as well. You've got a different level of responsibility you've got to take into account when you're
Oh,
when you're
yeah.
making that
Oh,
decision to
yeah.
start a business. That's for sure. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
So what was it like? So what once you're in full time building ends for kids, what were some of the major shifts or changes or pivots that you had to make in the course of growing your business?
Yeah, I think that it was learning how to wear different hats, but also when to let go of them as well. Because by this point, 2013, I'd gone over in 2000. We developed our baby earmuffs, that's one of the cups there. We developed those in Brisbane in 2009. We never sought to make them, but people wanted kids earmuffs. The kids earmuffs were a bit big. They asked about baby ones, so we quite literally invented them here in Brisbane. Took them to America in 2009 2010 to a baby expo, got a good response. I went back in 2011 and set up an office in America, distribution, everything else. So by the time I was full time in 2013, I had an office and a warehouse in Australia, and I had operations in America as well. So it was, how do I continue growing Australia? How do we begin to grow and I guess continue growing the US? But you've got to be a product designer, you've got to do quality control and bookkeeping and accounting and cash flow management and advertising and marketing and all these things. So I think I learned quite quickly what I wasn't good at. I've got a terrible eye for design. I'm just no good at it. But for the first little while, as is so often the case with small business owners, I had to do the design. But I learned quite quickly this is not my wheelhouse. I need to find somebody else to help. I can do bookkeeping and accounting, but I didn't love the bookkeeping side of things. I love numbers. I love looking at data and figuring it out. But I guess the monotony of it, not a fan of that. So I needed to get someone to help me with that. I loved, designing the product, finding new markets, dealing with new customers. So I think it's really when you move into that, but I could focus now. I was still doing gigs on the weekend, but I wasn't teaching. 5 days a week, I could give however much time I needed to the one business, which is great as it helped me focus on the business, but it also helped me sift through, okay, I can't be managing that. I need someone to help. I'm good at that. I'll stick with that. And that sounds easy, but you've then got to learn to let go as well. And that is probably one of the biggest problems I see in businesses is that when you start a business, it's all you. You're everything. You are every single role. You're the warehouse team and the sales team and the CEO. You've got to let go if you want to grow. But a lot of people struggle to do that. And at the same time, they will complain that they're exhausted and they're tired and they don't have enough this and I wish I could. So the logical thing is, well, let someone else do it. But it's very hard to do. So I had to learn not only how to split the roles, but I had to learn to let go, let someone else
Yeah.
do them while I managed it with them.
Yeah, totally. And what was your strategy for doing that? Like, how did you go about handing over responsibility to others?
I think, look, money was still a big driver. We certainly weren't, we were selling a product that retailed for $30. It wasn't a massive cash flow income generator. It was profitable, but I had to be very careful with budgets. So I think I was dictated to by, well, I need to find someone that can, like everybody, you want someone that does the job really well and doesn't cost the earth. So
Yeah.
I thought, okay, well, I've got to get my numbers right. In the US, my strategy, I knew that was such a big market and was so important. I wanted to get that right. So I spent money finding a good attorney. I spent money finding the right logistics people. I spent money and time finding the right accountant, all three of which I'm still dealing with today. We're talking, goodness me, 13 years later. So there were times when I had to go, okay, this is going to be expensive, but it's worth it. But then there's also times like, do I need the absolute best of the best, or I just need someone to just get this job done? And every industry, every business is going to have different priority. For some people, you need the best graphic designer you can possibly get. And, your logistics is not so much of a thing or may not even exist. Obviously everyone needs a good bookkeeper and needs a good accountant, but how often do you need your bookkeeping done, or how much tax advice do you need? So I really had to learn, because I was quite literally building an industry that didn't exist. I'm proud of the fact, and also great to be a little bit, that you jump on Amazon now and search baby earmuffs and there's cheap knockoffs from China and all these different brands. But I'm proud of the fact we were the first ones to do it. So
Yeah.
I was navigating unknown territory in terms of what other markets need this. So I was doing a lot of research. Where else can we sell our product? Not just in terms geographically, but we found that people were using them in MRI machines, and they were using them on airplanes and powerboats and all sorts of things. So I really had to keep growing the market. And I guess the visualization of it was, as I kept stepping forward, I'd sort of put a marker in the ground and grab someone and go, can you look after that for me? And then I'd step forward. Hey, can you do that? Can you now ship the orders? Can you now do our accounting? Can you do our graphic design? Doesn't mean you're leaving behind. You're obviously checking in with them, but you've got to learn to just release a few things. And that's going to be driven by where you're going and how quickly you want to get there too.
Yeah, true. So how has marketing changed? So in the early days, were you reliant on search engines at the beginning, and then how's that shifted?
Yeah, oh, goodness me. I can give you one answer. It'll be different next week.
Yeah.
It's just so with the rise, because obviously it's shocking to think, but we were around pre-Instagram.
Yeah.
I think timing wise, even possibly pre-Facebook. So back then it was just very much organic SEO, organic search engine optimization. You've got to make sure you got good keywords and good metadata on your website, and then you trust that Google's algorithm will put you at the top of the results. And there's, our brand is M's for kids, but our website is earmuffsforkids.com.au. That was very deliberate. I want keywords in there. If you're looking for kids earmuffs, Google's going to rank us well because of that website name. So there's a reason I chose that. Look, it was that, and for us too, and I found this a lot with the baby industry, the children's industry. You're buying a product for your most treasured, not possession, your children aren't necessarily possession, but the most treasured thing in your life is your family. And we're selling what is essentially a safety product. And so people are going to be a little bit apprehensive. So we're selling a safety product for, the most treasured people in your world, and it's a product that's never existed before. So we had to do some work to convince people as to why they need it. And so we put a lot of info on our website, but we found one of the best things we did was face-to-face interaction. We would do 4 or 5 baby expos a year right around the country and eventually internationally. So people could come to us, and a lot of people would say, what do kids need these for? I've never seen these before. I mean, look, we had people walk past and openly laugh at us, and then apologize. But by then it was probably a bit too late. But, it seemed absurd. But for us, the face-to-face interaction, the communication was really big, not necessarily in convincing someone to buy a product they didn't need, but I guess allaying some of their concerns and answering some of their questions, which is why now myself and any of our team can sell pretty much anyone a pair of earmuffs, because you don't need it. Maybe your brother-in-law does, or maybe you've got a friend that does. And so that was a big part. And then that then led to word of mouth. People would use the product, find it worked well, tell their friends. Now, oh my gosh, where to start? There's Instagram ads, and there's ads on Facebook, and there's organic SEO, and there's geo-targeting and so many different things, but not all of it works for us. And every business has got to find out what works. And we have looked at everything. We've looked at billboards and sponsorships and all sorts of things. And some of them have been great, some of them have been terrible, and some of them have been really consistent. So that's a really tricky one in terms of whenever someone starts, you've got to find what works for you, because it won't all work.
Yeah, and I guess for you, what's the primary strategy that seems to be working at the moment?
Look, Google and search engines are still a really big one for us. If you talk about hot, warm, and cold customers, is a term that they talk about in marketing. Our product is quite unique. Well, not unique, but it's in a particular sphere that people usually go looking for us. If you're selling T-shirts, you could just throw ads to almost anybody, and if the ad looks good and engages someone, they might just grab, I'll click on that, I'll go to that website, I'll have a look. But ours is not necessarily the kind of product. Not to say it can't happen, but it's not the kind of product where if you just put kids' earmuffs on a website, on a random web page, someone's going to go, oh, yeah, I need those. If that person doesn't have kids, or if they, don't really go anywhere that particularly noisy, everyone needs T-shirts. Not everyone needs earmuffs. So for us, it's been when people look for us, we need to make sure they find us. And where's the first place people look? They generally look online or on Google. So that's been a big one. And I think too, the expos were good for us because we talked to a lot of people that didn't have kids yet, but were pregnant or were planning on having children. So it was a case of, well, hey, when you need some earmuffs, remember us. Take a flyer. Here's the brand name. Mm-hmm. So getting in front of people, and that can be a little. It's very hard to measure because you just don't know if you're going to get that return. But getting into industries and events and places where people see your product and then they somehow bookmark it. So a year later when they need it, oh, what was the name of that company? And then they're probably going to go online and look for us anyway. There we are again. Got to make sure we're easy to find.
Yeah, definitely. So during that time, obviously the biggest challenge in business is trying to balance the priorities of business and family. What was that like for you, and how did you navigate the tension of focusing on your business but also focusing on family?
Yeah. Oh, look, I'll let you know. it's a juggling act. It really is. Again, I've got a wonderful wife and great kids who are very supportive and very patient with me. I think, look, I've always just loved my family. I've just loved being around home. I love to travel and I love to be away and see the world and whatever, but I really do genuinely love just being at home. It's a real sanctuary for me. So look, when it came to travel, I would, I've been to the US 25 or 30 times. I've been to Asia more times than that, more times than I can remember, but I would always keep it fairly succinct. I would go, I'd do what I needed to get done, then I'd get home, because I just want to see my wife and kids. And so, look, I once did a trip to the US. I was on the ground for 36 hours and I was straight back home. Now, it was for a very crucial particular meeting. I could have stayed. I remember I saw something about a couple of years ago, they were talking about leisure, which is business leisure travel. You go for a business trip, then you have a week's holiday. And I remember thinking, no way. Like, once I'm done at work, I'm going home, So that's always been just an innate thing for me. Now, has it cost me in terms of the growth and the success of M's for Kids? Possibly. There may have been some things where if I was prepared to be away more or do more, I could have got more sales or more customers. It's a price I'm prepared to pay, for the sake of my family. I had to learn to separate the two. Like, when I first started, I was running M's for Kids literally from the kitchen table. I think my wife set a good precedent in that after Lucy, our second daughter, was born, I said I'd stay home to help. I think after about 5 days, she kicked me out of the house because I was trying to help, but I was doing emails and stressing about this. And she's like, oh, just go work somewhere, do your work and then come home. And it was, great advice. But, I spent a few years after that, I ran the business from the garage. We had a year. We couldn't get the cars in because it was full of stock. And I would wake up in the morning. I would dress like I was going to work. I'd say goodbye to my wife and my kids. I'm off to work now, and then I'm going to the garage and work in there. But I tried to really partition the two, And then once we got a warehouse and offices, that became a lot easier. I was the guy, unfortunately, in the early days of I had the phone at the table during dinner and something would happen, I'd check it. But eventually you sort of get past that. I turned off notifications on my phone of whenever we got a sale because I just didn't want to think about it, after 6 o'clock. Now, look, I still check emails at night. We all do. Every now and then I've got to do a call with America or Europe early morning or late at night. I think, if you're a business owner and you show your family that you're working hard, they're going to be really gracious with that, I hope. But that if you also show that you're prepared to draw a line in the sand and go, no, this is family time now, there's a push and pull to it. If you're prepared to work hard, they're going to be gracious and let you do that. But then if they see that you really wanting to focus on family time, then like, okay, when you do need to work, we'll let you go. I think, look, I've seen I've seen people work themselves to the bone and get a lot of money, but destroy relationships in their life with their family and their friends. And it's just not something I've ever been prepared to do. And it's just me. It is tough though, and it's ongoing. COVID was particularly difficult. We were hit very, very hard, and we had a discussion as a family. Okay, I've got to get every sale I can. We've got to get. So if someone jumps on our website live chat and it's dinner, I've got to get it because we've got to take every lead we possibly can. And there was an understanding there amongst the family. They've been able, Kate and the girls have been able to come on trips with me to different places, so they see there's a benefit there as well. But I think it's communication more than anything else. You've just got to talk and establish some real clear boundaries as well. Easier said than done, but it's doable.
Yeah, and I feel like business it is a team sport, and it is a sport that your family are a part of. And I think where a lot of us miss out is we actually don't consider our family as part of the team. And I think we feel like we're leaving our family to go and work with our team when we actually forget that our family is our team and that we're working alongside them as much as we are working alongside our employees.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I would absolutely agree with that. And I think my wife tells me I'm a little bit unique in that, not to perpetuate the stereotype, but I'm a guy, but I actually like to talk a lot, as you're probably gathering from this podcast. And that's how I process. It's how I think. So, Kate has learned that when I come home at the end of the day, sometimes she just needs to listen and nod and say, yeah, every 30 seconds, and I just need to get it out of my head, And there are things like frustrations I can talk to her about, things I can talk to her about that I can't talk about with people at work because it's not appropriate or they just won't understand. And so, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There's a real support network and a support mechanism in your family as well. You should never cut the two of them off completely, but I think where they do merge or where they do start to cross boundaries a little bit, it's really important to just keep a close eye on it and communicate through it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would you do differently if you were looking back on the last 18 years of building earmuffs for kids? Like, is there anything that you look back on and you're like, I probably would do that a little bit differently if I had my time again?
Yeah, definitely. I think I probably I would have jumped earlier to full time. I would have taken bigger risks. Now, it's easy to say that when you can look back and see what happened, But being the first to market with a product is good. And I've since worked with businesses that are very similar that have been the first to market with a product or a brand or something. And I see myself in them. And I understand what they are going through and why there's a reluctance, but I'm also on the other side of it going, look, if you can get in here and if you can get ahead there, it's going to make a big difference down the track. Yes, it's a risk. And in our case, I think what held me back, and I think there was some prudence to it, was that it was a brand new product. It was a brand new industry. I didn't know if it would work, And so I had to be a little bit measured. Now we still took risks. The first pair of earmuffs we made was 5 figures, all the R&D and tooling and all that sort of stuff. We definitely took risks. But I think I'd probably, I'd push a little harder. And I think it's, everyone talks about gut instinct, and it's a thing. It's true. I would listen to that a little more. There have been situations where the numbers and the data have told me do it, but my gut instinct has been either not yet or don't do it at all. And I've learned to trust that. And that can be hard because when you've got other people in the business or your family or investors saying, no, you should do it, it's hard to stick with that. And it's hard to know when it's your gut, when it's fear. So I think I'd probably trust my gut a little more when it comes to dealing with, certain markets, certain people, certain businesses. You just get a bit of it. And you learn how to trust your gut instinct because you look back and go, you know what? I was hesitant. I shouldn't have done it. Next time I feel that way, I'll pay attention. And that's life, It's all learning and it's all growing. But yeah, I think that's probably the big thing for me. And then I think, just trying a little bit harder to get products into market. I don't look back and regret not being away more. I was already away quite a lot. I could have done more. I'm glad that I didn't. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is everyone's going to have things that they would have done differently. Everyone's going to have things they wish they could change. I think rather than regretting and wishing you could change and looking back, you go, what did I learn from it? What did I get from it? So it becomes a positive reflection rather than a negative one,
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So where's the next season of Earmuffs for Kids? What does that look like for the next 5 years?
Well, Yeah, I think there's still a lot of markets we haven't worked with. We moved the manufacturing of our baby earmuffs back to America in 2017. And that was a deliberate move because I could see what was coming. Our product was getting more and more popular. It was growing. And sure enough, factories in China and things started to copy our product. And I still wanted to be unique more than just the product, but how the product's made and where it's made. So, we're still looking to expand our markets into Asia. We've still got new products in the pipeline. We just launched a noise cancelling headphone for kids at the start of this year, and that's been going really well. We've sold out of that twice already. So there's new products and new ideas, new markets. I think it sounds fairly cliche, but that probably is where it's at. And I think for me, within that is learning, okay, what else do I need to let go of? What else do I need to get someone else to do so I can free up more time to see what I need to focus on? How can I grow the business? Because obviously I'm the one driving this thing, and I've got to work out where we're going to go. And look, the world is changing so fast, even just in terms of how you market your brand and advertise it and promote it and things like that. You've always got to be ready, and you've always got to be keeping an eye on what's going on. And so I think it's one thing to say, oh, we're going to go and do this, and this is our next plan. But between here and there's so much that can happen. You've really got to be concentrating to make sure you keep heading in the right direction and not, falling into any potholes along the way as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and what about from a margins point of view? Like, obviously the last few years have been pretty much all over the place when it comes to supply chains and cost of goods and all of that kind of stuff. How have you been able to manage that and still maintain some level of margins to make sure that there's enough there, one, to support your family, but also to grow the business?
Yeah, great question. When we're probably lucky in that we are the manufacturer, the importer, the distributor, the wholesaler, the retailer. So we've got complete control over every step of the way. We do outsource some manufacturing and things like that. We had one particular element of one of our products 4 months into COVID, the company that was making it went under, and I had about 2 months to replace a product line, and that was interesting. So I think you got to know your numbers. You got to know your numbers inside out and back to front. At every touch point along the way. One thing, I've got a great marketing manager, and she taught me early on the value of a product and the value of a brand. And we had as competitor products started to come in and competitor brands, I would start saying, well, we should discount here and we should offer this deal, and she pushed back, which was great. She said, no, like, we've always prided ourselves on being a quality product with quality service that costs money, and so we don't need to discount all the time. There are plenty of cheap, bargain bin brands that will do that. That's not us. And it was great advice, and so we've maintained our price, and obviously with inflation, we've had to increase it. I mean, once again, my team had to really push me through that. I think we wanted to put a product up by $1 once, which is, less than 3% of our cost. And I was like, oh, but it might, what if people react badly? But now it's just something you just have to do. You just have to factor it in. So, and one thing I will say, and, you don't want people to take advantage of this, but when there's inflation, everyone's expecting everything to go up. It's actually, in some ways, and hear me out here, in some ways it's actually the best time to increase your prices. A, because you have to, but B, people aren't shocked when it happens because everything else is going up anyway. So, no one's going to turn around and when, cost of living is going through the roof, if people turn around and go, what do you mean your price has gone up? Most people subliminally will go, oh yeah, they may not be happy about it. But now, obviously, some people can exploit that and try and just make extra money. For us, it was a case of we just got to keep up. That's pressure as a business owner, as you mentioned. You've got to if you put your prices up, or you've got to have enough margin to support your family, but you've got to have enough margin to support your staff and their family. There's a lot of people relying on you and other businesses that work with you. So we've had to increase our prices in line with things. We always try and make it modest. But because I've always been really particular about our margins and knowing our numbers, we're able to pivot pretty quickly. We've recently done a number of different private branding projects. We've got a couple of big sporting teams in the US we're working with. We've done some motor racing clubs in the UK. We've done sporting teams here, and so straight away, as soon as they say, look, we need this many, we want it for this price, I can quite quickly go, yeah, we can do that, and we can maintain our margins. But you've got to know your costs along the way to do that, and that then helps you when things go wrong. When COVID hits, when inflation goes up, you're able to shift everything a little bit and move everything a little bit rather than making these wild adjustments. That's when people will notice, and it can really hurt your business.
Yeah, totally. Great. So looking into the last question, obviously there's a lot of people that have been through the last season. They've probably found it pretty challenging. And for many, they're kind of going through the valley, as it were, right now. If you were to give them any advice or thoughts as to how to get out or how to get through this season of challenge, what would you recommend and what would you say to them?
There's a number of things. Like obviously, as I mentioned already, like family for me, home is a real, I guess, a bit of a sanctuary. You've got to have a place you can retreat to. And that's going to look different for different people. Make sure it's a place that is healthy to retreat to, whether it's habits or people or, it's an area where you can decompress as best you can. You can get some encouragement, you can get some support. That's crucial. That's a really big one. I think also as well, the ability to ask for help and to talk to people. And it doesn't mean you've got to go and enroll in university or do all these, massive courses to learn all this stuff. Just find someone that has been through what you're going through or is in a similar industry. That point of connection. Sometimes all you need to hear is someone else go, oh, yeah, I went through that.
Yeah.
I'm still here, oh, how'd you do it? And they can tell you. Or sometimes that's the most encouraging thing you'll hear because, you run your own business. You feel like when you screw up or when something goes wrong for you, it's only you. You've got it wrong. You've messed up. This has never happened to anyone else. No, it's happened to everybody. And so sometimes just hearing that is a really good thing. And, finding people that can help. And sometimes you got to pay those people. Sometimes you have to spend the money to get good advice and good support. In the long run, it'll pay off. It absolutely will. And I think too, be encouraged that when you go through something that's really hard, it actually in some ways turns out to be a real blessing because you can look back and think, oh man, if we got through that, this current challenge is nothing. We've had some things in the past 6 months with M's for Kids, nothing major, but at the time could have really been sort of thrown me. What do? Oh mate, we got through COVID. Our business dropped 70%. Oh, if we could survive that, this will be fine. So yeah. I think in some ways, and I think I've always had a bit of an inclination to that is if something's going wrong, there is a small part of me, sometimes it's buried way, way down, but there's always a part of me going, no, this is good for me. This will help me get better and this will help me not mess up the next time. So I wouldn't say embrace the challenge and celebrate it because you don't want to do that, but don't necessarily think it's all negative and there's no good to come from it. It can actually be really helpful and really useful, but find support. Sometimes it's financial, it's emotional, it's whatever it may be. Find some good support, ask some right questions, and to be really, really practical too, print out your profit and loss and go through every single expense line and ask the question, A, do we need that? And if we do we need to spend that much on it? And let me tell you, there were millions of people doing that in COVID. But I know for me, I was like, I should be doing this more often. I can cut that, get rid of that. That's just very, very practical, but it makes a big difference. And it makes you feel like you're having a win. You're getting some progress too,
Totally. And it's funny, I feel like we all seem to have this assumption that we are the person that can handle a multi-million-dollar, 8-figure business. But the reality is it's those difficult seasons that actually help you become the person that can actually lead a business at that level. And if we don't go through those challenges, we won't become the people that can actually lead and manage a business at that level.
No, correct. And I think that's why you even see it with certain people that get success very quickly. Unfortunately, statistically, a lot of them burn out or crash very quickly. You hear the old adage of people that win the lotto, the very small percentage that still have that wealth a year or two later, because you've got to learn, the old got to crawl before you can walk is very true. And you've got to make small mistakes so you don't make really, really big ones. And the principles are the same. It's just there's a few more zeros on the end, hopefully, by the time you've learned how to walk a bit straighter and not trip over so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent. Well, it was so good to have a chat to you today, Dan. I think it's been, I loved hearing your story and all about earmuffs for kids. And if someone is interested in finding out a bit more about earmuffs for kids, where would they go and what would they do?
Well, look, if you Google us, you should find us, which would be great. But if you go to earmuffsforkids.com or .com.au if you're in Australia specifically, you'll find us there. There's a bit of my story on there. There's ways to get in touch with me if you need as well. And yeah, look, keep an eye out for us on Instagram and different things. And we've got some pretty exciting stuff coming up later in the year too. So you'll be seeing us, I think, whether you want to or not. Hopefully.
That's great. Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Dan. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks again for joining us on the Business Pro League podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, I'd love you to subscribe, like, rate, comment, all of the above, and I would love to hear your feedback and hear from you. So, hey, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.